Are you ready to unlock the secrets of attracting top talent to your startup? Imagine walking into a room full of eager founders, each one buzzing with ideas but overwhelmed by the chaos of building a new business. What if you had the key to transform that chaos into a thriving team of innovators? Today, we are diving deep with John, a master at helping businesses secure the best talent in the world. From navigating the challenges of startup culture to understanding the art of negotiation, John shares his journey and insights that could redefine your approach to building a successful team. Stay tuned as we explore real world stories, uncover the strategies that work, and reveal the skills you need to thrive in the ever evolving landscape of entrepreneurship. Hello, John. How are you doing today?
Good, yourself?
I'm good, thank you. Good, thank you. Which part of the world you're joining in from?
Dialing in today from Ottawa, Canada.
In Ottawa. Nice. Is it cold there right now, or summer started?
Summer, summer starting. We're still in like the cold. Spring is going to come someday phase. We have some nice days, but it's 10 degrees Celsius yesterday, so it's not
Nice
there
and
yet.
good.
Maybe in
Yeah.
June.
Great stuff. Great stuff. So, John, before we start, then, do you have a favorite quote, something that inspires you, motivates you, you would like to share with our audience?
Yeah, there was a quote that was given to me back in high school. I trained for the basketball team, and I didn't make the team, but the coach gave me a little note from a famous coach. I don't know the coach's name, but the quote was, "When growth stops, decay begins," which is basically to say, you always have to be improving yourself every day a little bit. And that really stuck with me, obviously. And I try to live by that, the continuous improvement mentality.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. So, John, you help founders establish businesses and multi-million dollar companies to get hold of the top talents in the world. You help them understand what they value, what they don't value. You help them understand what are the different strategies to actually have attention from these top talent around the world, right? Imagine we are sitting in a room full of founders, right? Early stage builders, let's say 50% of them already have some sort of funding available, and 100% of them are in chaos because they're founders, right? They're always surrounded by chaos. You enter the room, you have the stage, you have the spotlight, and you have the mic. What incident, story, or part of your journey you will share with them so that they can stick with us for the rest of the hour?
Well, I would share a story of going to an established supplement company, and they were looking to start a new, let's say, a startup within that company, a new division, right? And they knew what they wanted to do was for pet supplements, because apparently people love their pets so much, and everyone's looking to get into pet supplements now. So they were looking to start a new startup. They had funding. They knew roughly the headcount they wanted to bring on. And so we said, look, we can help you build your team. And why this was important was we already had gotten to know them really well. We know their business. We understood their culture. We understood their goals, right? Really able to talk to them to understand their 3-month plan, their 3-year plan for the business. And when we looked at the people that they wanted to bring on, we were able to work from the beginning, right? And be embedded with them to really understand the scope of each role they want to bring on, to understand their goals for each role, their budget as well. And this is the thing with most startups, there is a budget in terms of bringing on talent. So as much as people would want to bring on the big enterprise people or the big people that have the big logos, a lot of times you can't afford that in an early stage startup. And you don't want to spend that kind of money either, spending 200,000-300,000 for salaries each person, right? So knowing that, we embedded with them, we were able to work over a period of 6 months to help bring on their startup go-to-market team, right? And being embedded was great and being able to do all the roles was great because every person we brought on, we figured they were part of the whole, right? So you're building a whole team. Everyone, you're thinking about the culture in terms of each person working together. You're thinking about how they're going to work with management. It's like building a puzzle from scratch, right? And I think for founders that are listening and looking to build a team, it's really important that you have a team that's able to really be hands on and give you that high level of touch and support and collaboration, because it's your baby. It's your baby that you're trying to launch, and you want to make sure that you have the right people that come in. Now, one of the things we did was, look for people that had that startup mentality. People that had worked in startups before, knew the struggles, knew the long hours, and the many hats that they would have to wear in the role. Because in a startup, even though your title may be operations, you're also helping in marketing, you're helping in HR, you're helping with recruitment, you can be helping with many different things. Everyone wears many hats, the Swiss Army knife type individual. And that's the thing, is we recruit those kind of individuals knowing you have to be a bit scrappy. They understand what's going to be expected of them in a startup. And sometimes those big enterprise people are not ready for that, or not able to make the change, because going from a team that has structure and proper workflows and everyone is specialized, to a small team that is everyone's putting fires out, everyone's working together. It's a completely different work environment. It also is a struggle for people when they're going from enterprise to startups, because you know you don't have that name recognition. If you're working at Salesforce and you call a company, you're more likely to get someone on the phone because you're a big brand and they're going to give you the time of day. If you're XYZ startup and no one knows you, it's a lot harder to make sales. It's a lot harder to make inroads. It's a lot harder to make partnerships. And
That is what
so,
exactly I was about to ask. Like, why
yeah,
would a person who have been super successful in their career reach to a level that they could work with C-suite executives would like to join startups unless they have retired or they have had enough from the corporate world and they were just looking for something more exciting. And that's a very niche case, I'm
yeah.
assuming. I might be completely wrong. What does it give them? What's the value proposition here?
Well, I think for a lot of people going to startup is because they like building, right? If you're in an established company, like let's say you're in Amazon, everything's kind of structured and it's like a bureaucracy. Well, there's all the regulations, the workflows, you got to get approval through Workday with 10 different people to get something done. Then you go to a startup and you're like, hey, here I can build from scratch, right? If you're a marketing person, you can build the whole brand from scratch. That's interesting work. A lot of executives like to build. They like to feel ownership over what they're doing, working towards also a bigger payday with equity and so on. Because if you're in a salary in a big corporation, they're giving you a cost of living increase 2-3%, right? But you go to a startup, maybe you'd start with a lower salary, but there is a huge potential that as the company grows, your salary will increase. You'll get equity that could possibly be worth something one day. Not to say it always is. A lot of startups fail, but that's the risk you take. It's exciting. Also, the ability to have direct line of access to the founder and CEO, right? If
Mm.
you're in, again, a big enterprise, there could be multiple layers of leadership. There's a manager, director, a VP, a SVP, board of directors. So you feel like you're a cog in the wheel rather than at the helm being able to steer the ship, right? And
Mm.
in a smaller startup, you have a lot more agency, a lot more control, ability to build. So for people that enjoy that, and if you've already made your money, then it's why not? Let me do something I really would enjoy. Let me take on something, or it could be that the startup is doing some work, or their product or service is something that really resonates with you, right? I was talking to one person that was making drugs, that capsules for medicine that would go through your system and not break down until they reached your intestine or something. And anyways, the capsule itself would allow better absorption of drugs. They thought that was a really cool idea. And that's why they went to that startup, right? So you may find an interesting product out there, an interesting service, right? Everyone's rushing to go work at AI companies because they see that as the future. So it's also the work, not just the pay and stability, right?
Would you be able to share with our listeners some numbers which you've been helping C-suite executives to get into the different roles, right? Share some numbers in terms of what are the compensation offered in 2026 for C-suite executives, location, and if you could throw some light on the equity they've been offered for different kind of roles. Just like a ballpark number, not like exact figures.
Yeah. So It depends on the role you're in. I'll just speak to the type of roles that we recruit. So we do sales, marketing, HR, and ops. And this is general because I don't have the, the chart in front of me with all the numbers. But I would say most startups are offering, as a director or head of role, at least 150 grand. 150 to 200 is usually what we're seeing out there. This is for
Mhm.
funded startups, right? Obviously, if it's in New York or something, there may be a bit of a premium, but I'd say most startups are wanting to pay under 200 for an
Mhm.
executive. Now that's low comparative to full-time salaries at some of the major firms, right?
Mm.
And they offer equity usually a few percentage points. Could be 1 to 3%, could be even less fraction of a percentage, depending on what the value is projected to be of the company, right?
Mhm.
1% of $1 billion can be quite a bit of money. So it depends on the startup itself, but that's typically what we see, a few percentage points or a fraction. And that can also mean that they get more per year that they're there. And there's ways of them vesting or having some kind of, profit sharing as well that they can offer. For these positions, there's usually a bonus as well that is tied to performance. So they're going to have some quotas or some goals for revenue and so on. I'd say a minimum bonus would be at least 10%. And then I've seen bonuses up to 50% or 100%, depending on how low the salary is. Right. I think for sales, typically, if you get a salary of, let's say 150, there'd be a bonus of at least 40 to 75% on top, maybe 100, to double up what their salary is. It's usually very aggressive on the bonus structure because as a startup, you want to minimize risk in terms of your payroll costs and tie it to actual revenue. So if the revenue comes in, you can afford to pay more people more. But if it doesn't, your monthly burn rate is lower. Like that's kind of how they structure it. And of course, these numbers you can actually find on our site. We do have compensation guides that we've built out for these roles, and they'll have more accurate numbers because it changes all the time. But I'd say in tech, those numbers are pretty good in terms of what you're going to see. And this is in the US, right? Salaries are much higher in the US compared to Europe and overseas.
Mm.
So there's that caveat that there's a premium. But the cost of living is also higher, right?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds okay. So just to give you a comparison, Norway. So we host quite a lot of events here in London. We have executives coming from Norway. We have executive coming from Luxembourg, obviously England, and then we have German people. Senior architects, 15, 20 years experience, easily have like 200, 250,000 here in England, similar in euros in major cities in Europe. And we have these small startup incubator programs like Antler, EB, Zinc, Oxford Ventures. These incubators invest around for 10% equity, which is not a lot when it comes to building a startup, but that's what they're willing to invest into early stage startups. And I don't exactly know, but it feels like the number you have shared is exactly similar for C-suite executives when it comes to for a small startup. I think it's similar across all the location when it comes to developed countries. I'm not sure about how it is reflected in some of the developing places. For example, I'm not sure if it is similar in Dubai or Bangalore or Tokyo. To be fair, I shouldn't say Tokyo is not a developed country. It is fairly most one of the most developed country, Japan, right? So I hope that it's similar. Great. So John, take us through the whole process when a founder comes to you and say, "This is the budget." And we are looking for, let's say, for our hypothetical situation, we are looking for a CTO or a CMO, let's say, because you're in marketing and sales, right? What are the different stages you take them through, and what is your strategies to get the talent in?
Yeah. So with us, we always start off with a discovery call. We ask them to bring all of their hiring team, all the stakeholders involved on the call. This call is really important because we want to understand everything about their company, everything about their work environment, culture, what's their goals for this position? What is the position? Right? Go through the job description with them, make sure we're aligned, understand the goals for the role, the first 90 days, the first 3 years. Is there room for growth? Any kind of bonus and so on that they want to offer? This is where we can also sort of negotiate with them in terms of flexibility. So if they come and tell us, look, I want a CMO for 100,000, we tell them, you're dreaming. So it's kind of that gut check of like, okay, is what you want realistic? If not, we consult with them and give them some advice, professional advice in terms of what this should actually look like. If they have a very tight budget, we can work with them. If they have a very big budget, then that also opens up opportunities, right? Because it gives you an idea of what kind of caliber individual we're targeting. Typically, salary wise, we want to be at least at the 80th percentile. So if you had 100 companies, you want to be in the top 20. That's the 80th percentile, especially if you're looking to bring on passive talent. So, someone from your competitors. No one's going to leave their job if you're going to offer them the same amount of money that they're making right now at the job they're at, because they're stable. They know, the devil they know, right? In order to get them to leave, you have to usually pay more. Or you better have a very strong value proposition that makes them want to leave their company to come to yours. So maybe you do, but in most cases you don't, right? You're a small startup. No one knows you. No one cares. And as much as the founder may love their company, nobody else cares.
Yeah.
They don't. So make them care. How are you going to make them care? Equity, salary, good culture, good team, good collaboration, right? So we find that all out in the discovery call, make sure we understand everything. From there, we're going to create a scorecard in terms of what an ideal candidate would look like. We call this the unicorn, let's say. What does your unicorn look like? And we basically tell them, look, now that we have the mandatory criteria, we sign off between us and the founders what their criteria is. It's really important to have that alignment. You need to have both parties feeling like it's a partnership. We understand each other. We understand what we're going to be doing. We explain to them our search process, which is our concentric circles process that we use. So in the center, you have your ideal candidate, your unicorn, and then you make a circle out. That's your competitors, your direct competitors in the space. Usually they want someone from a competitor. Then the next circle will be in the industry, but not a competitor. The next circle is adjacent industries, similar industries, right? And then each circle out is farther and farther away from the ideal. So with our exhaustive search process, we always make sure we start at the perfect, and then we'll continuously do circles out as needed until we find a person that would be applicable, right? And this is an exhaustive search process. So we explain all that to them, how it's going to happen, and the timeline. We build a timeline with them as well for the search. We average 39 days for an exec search, right? From there, we then go and start doing some research. We spend at least 48 hours doing research, maybe more. We then have a second meeting with them. This is our alignment meeting. And in this meeting, we basically say, look, we've done research on your competitors, on your business, on the industry. We've built a list of about 75 to 100 individuals that we think are going to be a good match for your company. Let me show you 5-10 profiles. Let's actually look at these profiles, look at their resumes, look at their LinkedIn, for example, and let's have a conversation, right? And the conversation basically is, if we found this person for you, would you want to interview them? And if not, give us feedback. So this alignment call is a good way of saying we have a funnel of candidates, right? At the top of the funnel is 100 candidates we have for you. Is the funnel a quality funnel? Because if you have garbage coming in, you'll have garbage coming out at the bottom, right? It's important that we have alignment with them, that they really like the quality of candidates. So showing them 10 profiles usually does the trick. We say, do you like these candidates? Are they the kind of background you're looking for? Is there any preferences you're seeing here? We really understand the qualitative type things, because in the first call, we talked about quantitative metrics and mandatory criteria. But in this call, we're looking at, okay, what's your preference? And they'll say, oh, I don't like the companies they worked at. Okay, why? I don't like the school they went to. I don't like that they changed jobs, right? There's all these different things that'll come out. And this is where we really get to understand their thought process for hiring. And we can work with them to be aligned. The whole point of the call is to be aligned. And if we can get at least 7 out of 10, an okay thumbs up, yeah, this is a good candidate, I want to talk to them, great. Then we know we're on the right path to having a quality search. That call is probably the most important call of the whole process, because if you don't have alignment, the rest of the process will be garbage. You'll have conflict and issues, right? So this is also where they sometimes will say, you know what, maybe we don't want someone like what we said we wanted. Maybe we want something different, And it's funny how people change their minds once you start showing candidates. So um, or they see some candidates and they're like, oh, I didn't think about their background. That actually looks really good, maybe.
Mm.
They start to think about who could join their team. And sometimes they'll find a candidate, we show them, they're like, oh, I want that person. If you find them, I'll hire them. Great. Made my job so much easier. So, anyways, the point is we need to have alignment. We need to make sure we're on the same page. The quality has to be there. And it's also just fun going through the profiles without stress, right? This is like, hey, it's a profile. We haven't talked to these people yet. So if you don't like them, that's cool. Like I haven't spent, 3 weeks recruiting this person. So it's a good way to, it's a pre search kind of thing, right? Anyways, that alignment call, once we do it, we guarantee within 2 weeks interviews with us. Within 2 weeks, we'll have interviews, candidates to present. We present them with a portfolio, a resume. We know exactly what they're looking for salary wise, exactly what they're looking for, equity and everything else, why they're wanting to leave the company and so on. And we'll present candidates as they become available, right? Within 2 weeks. We'll coordinate that process with them. Typically, we advise a client of ours to do 3 interviews with their candidate that we provide, once with HR, once with the team, and once with the board or, the main hiring group. And we'll coordinate that whole piece. We ask that process ideally to be 2 weeks, from start to finish so that the candidates are not waiting forever for responses and advice. Keep in mind, a lot of these people are actively working at competitors. They don't need to leave. So if you're going to drag out a process, they're like, I don't care for this job. I already have a job. So if you're not going to make me feel good and have it an easy process for me, I'm out of here, right? You make it too difficult, they're out. You're trying to court them. It's like dating, you know? You don't take them out to the nice restaurant. It's not going to happen. So anyways, point being, short process, 3 interviews. That is the ideal. If you do that process, you will ideally have the best outcome. The longer you drag it out, higher chance of candidate drop off, right? Either they get another offer because they're a very good candidate, or they just, they drop off. They don't care anymore. So we manage that process, we coordinate it, and then we can negotiate the contract and the offer with them. This is also the tricky part, is the negotiations, when's the start date, what is the compensation. We've already pre-negotiated that a lot, but a lot of times founders want to, you know, can we get them for 5,000 cheaper? I think in some cases they're their own worst enemies when it comes to that negotiation piece. But as long as it's within a reasonable offer, it usually is okay. But you start lowballing candidates, they're not going to stand for it. They just won't take the offer. They'll have other options. Or the worst case scenario is you offer them a low wage, they'll take the job, and then they'll leave after 6 months when they get a better offer. And so when we structure deals, it's always, we want a placement to last for 3 years. So what do we have to pay them for them to stay for 3 years? That is what you need to be thinking, not just, oh, how can I get them just to sign the contract and come over, right? And so that's very important to think about, is retention. And we always have that in mind with our offers. And that's why when we talk to candidates, we ask them, oh, what are you looking for an offer? Have you had other offers, counter offers, and you understand what they're worth, and then you can speak to the kind of salary they should be offered, because retention is also part of the recruitment process.
Indeed.
How are we involved and
I
how
was
are we?
about to ask you this, like, this must be like, you must be facing this on a daily basis where people like
Yeah.
join in and then leave like in couple of weeks and things like that, right? So maybe next, maybe we can jump on to the next section where we discuss about, would you be able to share some of the worst stories you came across while you were working with client? The reason I want to talk about it is because I want to understand what are the different scenarios which founders have to go through, as well as the candidates has to go through, to understand what is wrong and what is right. And potentially after listening to this part, they will know that, because we have somebody who has tons of experience in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, they a lot of times, I think what it comes down to is the mentality. Okay, if you're a founder and your mentality is, my company is the very best place in the world, everyone should dream to come work with me, my product is the best, I'm the best. If you have that mentality, good luck.
Mm.
Good luck. Because that mentality creates an idea that the employees are just peasants, and we can offer them whatever we want, and they'll come and they'll work hard, and they'll want them to work 12-hour days, 996, like in China they're doing right now, 9-hour day, 12-hour days, right? Like that kind of mentality of you're the worker, you're subservient and subordinate to me. That
Mm.
mentality is usually what creates a lot of problems, right? Because they'll lowball the salary, right? And they're just thinking, oh, I want to save money, so I'll offer them less. Well, that person, they may take the job because they're maybe needing work at the time. In 6 months, they get another offer, 50K more, they're gone.
Mm.
Just like that. And you're wondering, why are people leaving? Well, you lowballed them, you paid them low, you didn't offer financial incentives. That's a big part of it. But the other part is the respect factor. Are you respecting them as, for example, you bring on an executive, 20 years experience, treat them like an executive. Don't micromanage them. Don't be over their shoulder every 5 minutes asking them what they're doing. Don't ask them to track their time, ask them for results. What are the results we can get? What kind of support do you need? And let them run. It's like a wild horse, you let it run, it'll do its thing. So I think it's the mentality sometimes of founders that can be, some people are just not meant to manage people, right? And a lot of founders, if they're very product oriented or very technical, they may lack people skills. And this is an
Mm.
unfortunate thing. You don't have the people skills. If you don't have people skills, at least have self-awareness to say, okay, I'm not going to be the manager. Maybe I'll bring a chief of staff in that's very people friendly, people oriented, and they're going to be, for the most part, managing people, or bring in a COO that's very good with people, because I'm terrible and I'm very short with people, and that's fine. But if you have the self-awareness, you can get around those issues. So
Mm.
self-awareness, being humble, those are key things that help bring people on and make you want to work with them. Some of the mistakes I've seen, there's every possible thing you can think of, from lowballing candidates to making a candidate wait a month for any kind of feedback. They're not go on vacation, they just leave. Lack of respect to tell them, missing an interview with a candidate and then not apologizing or messaging them at all to tell them, sorry, I missed the interview with you. I was busy. I got pulled into a meeting. I'll make it up to you, or something. It's a respect factor that you're dealing with people that are highly skilled, they have options. In most cases, they have self-confidence and self-respect, and they're not going to be allowed to be treated poorly.
Mm.
Those are some of the main problems we see. Other things we see is sort of a lack of alignment, right? Like they don't understand what the executive is doing. And this I see a lot in marketing. The average tenure for a senior marketer is 18 months right now, which is very low.
Mm.
And the
Mm.
reason it's so low is the disconnect between what the CEO wants. I want leads and SQLs, MQLs, and pipeline, and then what the marketer can deliver. And some of the projects in HR and in marketing take time, right?
Mm.
If you're trying to change culture in a company and you bring on an HR specialist, let's say an HR director, the culture takes a year or two to change. Like it takes a long time, right? Especially if there's a lot of problems. You may have
Mm.
to let go a lot of people. You may have to change policies. You need to rebuild trust in an organization. That takes time. Same with marketing. You want to do SEO for your website. It's not a 1 month project. It's a
Mm.
6 months to a year to see SEO changes and results. So when you have a quarterly thinking, you're thinking like the board of directors, you're thinking about quarterly outcomes. That doesn't always jive with, this is a project that takes a year. You're not going to see first quarter any results, maybe minimal, right? And so for them, it creates pressure on these executives because they need the short-term wins, the quarterly wins, but they also need the long-term plans. And so is there a budget for all this? I don't know, but it does create some lack of alignment. And because of the fact they don't understand how the process works, they don't understand what they're doing. They just want results. And it's sort of like top down. I need this from you. And if not, you're gone. And again, that's the lack of collaboration, the lack of understanding, lack of empathy and knowledge too. And not every founder knows what a marketer does, what an HR person will do, and what a CFO does, right? They may be, product oriented founder, doesn't know everything about how a business runs.
Mm.
So surprise, now you're running a business and you developed a great product though, but you don't know what you don't know. So again, self-awareness to be able to ask questions and maybe bring in people that can do things better than you can, because you can't do it all, right?
Indeed. John, would you be able to share some of the out of the real world stories. For example, I have heard that there are instances where founders go outside searching for a C suite executive and they find someone who became their co founder without taking any salary at all. Just the equity, or you were looking to pay somebody $250,000 a year and they came on board and they just burned your money in a month and you're just bankrupted. Both side, you know.
Well, I mean, I've heard of these kind of stories. With us, we haven't, like, as far as our placements, I can say we've had really good results. So I can't say that has happened to us in terms of our placements. But I do hear about other companies making the wrong hire and how damaging it can be, you know. And so it's risky. I mean, just like with a startup, 9 out of 10 startups fail. There is a risk factor. Same with hiring someone. But I think that's where, if you're hiring people that have experience, that have done the job for many years and have had repeated results. So you hire someone that had 5 exits already. You know, they've already got exit. They got paid. They know what they're doing. You're very unlikely you're going to have issues with this person unless they lack motivation now because they've got all this money. But the point is, you know, it's also finding people with a track record of success, right? So when you're hiring people with 10 to 20 years experience, they've already made every mistake in the book already. So they hopefully learn from them, right? But I think having the track record of success, a good vetting process, very important. Checking references, checking the past companies they work with, what the results were, really digging down into the KPIs and the numbers. That's part of what we do to ensure that you don't have that, you know, stepping in it with a bad hire, right? End of the day, it also comes down to your budget as well, right? If you're hiring someone on the low end of scale and you're paying only equity, for example, no salary, I mean, there's only a certain caliber you're gonna bring in unless your company is like the next Google or something, right? If you were like, if I was OpenAI right now, I'm pretty sure OpenAI, they could hire people with equity only because they know there's a big payday with IPO in 2027. So if you're not OpenAI, I wouldn't do that. I would pay them a salary, you know? So I think it's what is your potential, what is the product, and so on, and what can you afford, right? And obviously, if you can afford it, I would say the go-to-market team you have for starting a launch, you want to have ideally the best of the best, because that gives you the best chances to make it out of the first few years as a startup, right?
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Well, John, very informative. Towards the end of our pod, I always ask this question to all of my guests because I think this is a very relevant question in 2026. What skill set or what kind of tech and soft skill an individual require in order to get into these C-suite positions? And the reason I'm asking this is because we have talked a lot about the left side of the story. I want to touch a little bit also on the right side of the story where the candidates are. We meet quite a lot of founders every month. They come on the stage for the pitching, and after 6 months we meet them again. But this time they're not there for pitching. They're just there because they enjoy the entrepreneurship space, right? But they have failed their startup, and we all know that 90% startup fails within the first 3 to 6 months, right? But life doesn't stop there, does it? Life has to carry on. They have family, they have kids, they have parents to look after. And when you have that kind of responsibilities, you have to bring the bread and butter on the table. For that, they have to either work for someone as an employee or just do something of their own, which continuously generate money. Some people work for Uber, for example, to pay their rent or mortgages, etc. What kind of skill sets you understand that is required right now, and what approach should founders follow when they have been to the journey of being a founder, but it didn't work out for them, so they're back into the market?
I'll start with the skill sets, right? I think there's obviously the technical skills in whatever domain you're in. So if you're a marketer, the marketing technical skills, finance, if you're a CFO, etc. You got to have those technical skills and background. I'd say, university degree is helpful. And then of course, specialization in whatever you're doing. So that's the learning aspect. I think curiosity would be number one in terms of, like, for the technical skills, curiosity, always learning, lifelong learning, continuous improvement. a person that has that veracity of wanting to learn and know new things, right? That's the technical side. Then on the other side is the EQ, right? Emotional quotient, the EQ, kind of being able to understand people, have compassion and empathy with them, especially with the big teams. As an executive, you usually are managing and leading people. So you need to have the EQ. That's huge for anyone that's going to be in management or C level. You need to have EQ. It's something to talk about all the time, right? But also for startups, it's a little bit different because you need both of those things, the EQ, the curiosity and technical skills. You also need that entrepreneurial spirit, the it factor. The it factor is not something you can really quantify. It's just that like some people just like to hustle, and that is really, you can tell by when you interview them, when you talk to them, they're always thinking about the next thing, how to, make money, how to make things happen. They're not satisfied with, they have ambition, right? These people. So finding people like that for startups, that have that mentality of all hands on deck, entrepreneurial spirit, take ownership over things and run with them, not just order takers that just sit there like pylons waiting for you to tell them what to do. That's the kind of people you need to find for startups. Now, if you're a founder and your startup fails, you're thinking, hey, maybe go join up with another startup that's in a better stage that you can contribute to and help, with your specialty and technical skills, and you can still have some kind of, seat at the table. Or maybe go start another startup, because I know people that are entrepreneurial, they just keep want to do it again. They do it again and again and again. After you do it 5 times, eventually you're successful. I've had actually a few startups I was in before that either failed or didn't work out, and so it's not my first startup now with Ready Set Exec. Probably my third or fourth round of doing this.
Mm,
No one's successful their first try out of the gate. If they are, they're very lucky or very well funded.
mm.
So we bootstrapped our company, and it was definitely a struggle the first couple of years.
Indeed, indeed. Great stuff.
Yeah.
Well, John, thank you so much for the information. So let's get into our lightning round. Then I've got 6 quick fire questions for you.
Yeah.
If you don't want to answer any of them, just give me a skip, and then I'll move on to the next one. Sounds good? Great. What are the top 3 strategies to generate more leads in 2026 when it comes to recruiting C-suite executives?
Top things for lead generation, I'd say social selling. Social media is a big one. Probably PPC is still pretty good. Most companies are using the Google ads, is another one. And referrals. Referrals is always top for any recruiting company.
Indeed. What book would you recommend to our audience and why?
I like Traction by Gino Wickman. It's a EOS book about entrepreneurial operating system.
Mm,
I like that book because it's good for startups. It's an easy way to run your business, and it's a quick read as well. It's pretty good, pretty solid book.
indeed, indeed. What's an attribute or characteristic in your mind of a successful founder?
Sorry, characteristics of a C-suite founder.
Yeah, what's one attribute or a characteristic in your mind for a successful founder?
Well, definitely entrepreneurial, right? You have to have that entrepreneurial ambition. You want to create something. If you're not ambitious, you're probably not going to want to be an entrepreneur anyways.
Yeah. What's your favorite personal productivity tool or habit?
I really like Slack. I've found using it really good with our team. We're remote, so it's very good to share things right in the inside the chat and everything else. So I find that pretty helpful.
Indeed. What's a new or a crazy business idea you would love to pursue if you had time?
Well, if I had money, I would make my own AI movie studio, because now with some of
Oh,
the tools, you can make full length movies with AI now. So if
mm,
I had the money, I would, buy a whole bunch of credits and make my own full length movies. Maybe in a few years, I'll be able to do that. I always wanted to be a movie director if I could have in another life.
why not? Why not? We are not far from a place when we will be watching an hour episode of a web series fully made by AI, I guess, in a couple of years, maybe. What's an interesting or fun fact about you that most people don't know?
Well, I have 3 kids, and they keep me very busy, and I have twins, so that
Hmm,
was a big part of it.
nice one, nice one. Well, John, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story, unpacking the industry standards as well as techniques which people, utilize nowadays to get C-suite executive talent. If people want to get in touch with you, if people want to have a conversation with you, what's the best way to do it?
Yeah, I mean, number one would be LinkedIn or going right to our site, readysetexec.com, and you can connect with me there and see all about us.
Great stuff. Just to notify our listeners that sign up for our newsletter because we might have a surprise gift from John for you. So it will be delivered to you via email. So don't forget to do that. John, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your inspiring journey and the impactful work you're doing. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on Founders Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.